Hello and welcome to Downtown. I'm your host, Robbie Haig. Thank you for being with us again. And today I am speaking with Hillary Greene, who is the Executive Director of the
Cape Islands
and
Southeast Mass
chapter of the Red Cross. Thank you very much, Hillary. It's wonderful to have you here.
Nice to be here. Thanks so much, Robbie.
Thank you. And can you tell us a little about Hillary?
Sure. So I've been executive director of the chapter since 2012. And before that, I served on the chapter board of directors. And I've been a blood and platelet donor since the early 1980s.
Wow.
So when I moved to the Cape full-time in 2000, I remember driving by the chapter house on South Street in Hyannis, and I thought, they didn't seem to do a lot of blood drives. I thought, well, what do you do? Because I thought the Red Cross was just blood drives.
Sure.
And I found out.
People think Red Cross and blood.
Right. And there's a lot of other things we do. So
Sure.
it was a real education. And actually, I was named one of their Red Cross heroes in 2005. And then again, I got onto the board. So I've been involved with the chapter for about 10 or 15 years.
Wow. So why were you a hero?
Oh, I donated a lobe of my lung to a woman. In 2004.
My goodness.
Yeah.
That's big time.
Yeah, actually, you'd be surprised how many people get nominated for donating, being an organ donor, a living organ donor, so yeah.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. That's another story.
Yeah, exactly. That's a long one.
So tell us about the Red Cross. How did it begin? And
Well, the overall Red Cross started in 1881 with Clara Barton, and Clara Barton founded the Red Cross because of the Civil War and taking care of families and soldiers, and then realized because it's not only the soldiers who need help, but the families need help. And most Red Cross chapters, or a huge majority of them, were started during World War I. In fact, our chapter was started in 1915. And it's back when women were doing everything from rolling bandages, but caring for soldiers who returned from war. We have a long legacy of service to the armed forces, which is still an area that it's one of our programs that we do ongoingly. Sure. Help train pre-deployment people who are being deployed, and then also we care for veterans. So we never stop. It's somebody who's served in the military. It's their entire life, but they can be helped by the Red Cross.
Very good. Yes, and way back I remember hearing about the Red Cross from an uncle of mine who was in the service, and the Red Cross was always there. Yes,
yeah, and we still do the emergency communication, which means if you have a son or daughter serving overseas and something very good or very bad is happening, you contact the Red Cross. It's a toll-free number, and you say, I need to get my service member home. And so we are the authorizing agency, because you can't just walk up to your commanding officer and say, hey, I gotta get home.
Right,
and we help get people home. So you still hear stories of, the Red Cross got my father home or my brother home in time for either birth of a baby or the death of somebody.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you think in this era of mass communication, you wouldn't need something like that, but it's a service we still provide.
It still happens. Well, that's good to know, because I do know some background on what the Red Cross does for people in the service and so on. But we pick out little tidbits and associate them with the Red Cross, but I'm sure the Red Cross does a great deal more than any of us really thinks about.
Yeah, and the main thing that people think is because we're the American Red Cross is that we're funded by the government, and we're not. We are funded by the American people and not from your tax dollars. It's individual donations, businesses, foundations. It's just, every year we need to raise our own money. So, when we celebrate our 100th anniversary for the chapter 3 years ago, we have all these wonderful scrapbooks starting from the 1920s. And there are all these stories of there would be Red Cross clubs and there'd be captains of a neighborhood, and you would go knock on the doors and get people to pay $1 to join the Red Cross, and that's how it's fun. And it used to be reported in the newspapers too. It was very funny. It'd be like, the Osterville team has raised $1,500, or the Girl Scouts give $34 to the Red Cross. Now I can't get any publicity, but that hasn't changed. There's no stream of funding that comes from the government. We are chartered by Congress to provide disaster relief services, but we don't get any funding for it.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it is, and that's why people should be very proud. The reason the Red Cross still survives is because of the American people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Never knew it.
Yeah, I know.
You know, you would think of it as a government agency.
Right.
Without question. You know? Just
Yeah,
without
exactly,
question.
yeah, because
So-
the name and
Right.
because we provide national services and we're called upon by presidents and everything, but yeah.
And you intercept, you know, people who are in need,
Yeah.
and you're just there.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that, you know, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is the federal government version, and then, you know, we work with FEMA and the local, you know, MEMA, but yeah, we're not a government agency. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I know you help people who have had fires in the houses.
Yes.
and
Yeah, so
so
that's
on.
something we do locally. We have
Yeah.
local volunteers. Our chapter has expanded a couple of times. We became the Cape and Islands chapter in 2006, and then in 2014 we became the Cape Islands and Southeast Mass chapter. So it's much bigger, but we still do local. It doesn't matter the name of my chapter. I have local volunteers in every area, that when a fire happens in Sandwich or in Provincetown, local volunteers come help. We canteen for the firefighters, with drinks and snacks, but then we help the people who have just been burned out of their house.
Right.
And we get them whatever assistance they need or get them referred to the different agencies that can help them. But those are volunteers doing that, middle of the night or
my.
whatever, yep.
Yeah, I'm sure the Red Cross in California is a very busy place at this point in
Yes,
time.
and we've actually deployed local volunteers to national
Oh, you
disasters.
do?
Yes, yeah. I think
good.
we're only one or two from my chapter area, but from our entire Massachusetts region, there are several more who get deployed. And we deployed people to Hurricane Florence and Hurricane Michael.
Wow.
So these are volunteers who will put 2 weeks of their life aside, fly out to wherever, stay in a staff shelter or work 18-hour days to help people recover from these terrible disasters. And they're amazing people, so.
No, and they are volunteers.
Yes, yep. Yeah, some of our staff gets deployed, but over 90% of the Red Cross is volunteer. We don't have a lot of staff. Like at the chapter house, there's me, and I have a part-time administrative assistant, and there's somebody who oversees our disaster response for the entire chapter area, and there's a woman who helps, who schedules the CPR and first aid type classes, but that's it. They're all different designations, but chapter employees is just me and a part-time admin.
Okay, and you just mentioned CPR and so on.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about that, how you work that out.
Yeah, so our Hyannis office on South Street does offer these classes: CPR, first aid, adult and pediatric, AED training. We also offer free mobile apps if you have a smartphone. So we have mobile apps that Pet First Aid is one of them, that it's free and you have it on your phone, so in an emergency you can rely on it. We also offer different classes for professional rescuers. We'll get a lot of people who say, oh, I need to get this certification for my job. So it's a busy place. So throughout just my chapter area, we train thousands of people every year. And now it's a 2-year certification. So when you come and get certified, which again, I like the mobile app aspect because we've got a first aid and an emergency app. So if you're a little rusty and an emergency arises, you can check out on your phone.
Wow.
So the Red Cross is a very old organization, but we have modern technology that helps keep this preparedness information and life-saving information right at your fingertips.
Right. And you mentioned AED. Would you tell everyone out there what AED stands for?
Yeah, so
And not to be afraid of it, thank you.
exactly. So many people have probably seen these things or heard AED, and it's automated external defibrillator. In your office or even your country club or your church, there'll be an AED on the wall, and it's to
And
be
the
used.
gym and
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
everywhere.
And almost everybody I talk to, except somebody educated like you, says, oh, I don't know how to use it, so I'm not touching it.
Right.
And the whole point of an AED is that you don't need to know how to use it. You take it off the wall, you open it up, and it speaks to you and tells you what to do. And when you've got the pads that you put on the person's body, it has little diagrams of where you put it. So that's one of my big missions, is to let people know that just don't be scared of it. Know where it is.
Right.
So that's not a question when something happens, when somebody collapses at work or at the gym, that you know where it is and you can be a part of that rescue team.
Very good. I do volunteer throughout a lot of places in Plymouth, and many of these places do have AED, but it's not something that you realize when you go into the building.
Right.
You have to look for it, you know?
Yeah, it's embarrassing. Like I'll do a presentation at like a senior center or something, and I'll say, well, I'm sure there's an AED in the building. And they're like, yeah. And then I'm like, well, it's right here. Like, oh, I walk by it every day.
That's right. And look at it. And,
and now it's like, and so imagine in an emergency, you want to be calm and remember important things like that. But it is, yeah. So that's a real simple thing that we try and get that information out free of charge. Again, we do the training and certification classes, so you will have a much better background and skills training and all of that. But at least the basic information, if everybody knows where the AED is and how to start to use it, that could save some lives.
And if I'm not mistaken, the having the AED in specific places in a town make it what is it they call it? Safe area.
I don't know what the designation would be, but we certainly work towards community resiliency.
Very
so
good.
that we were talking earlier about trying to get every senior in high school to be trained. I mean, just the more resilient your community, more prepared for disasters and emergencies your community is, the safer you are overall, and also that you have a sense of confidence and less helplessness. If you can prepare for these emergencies and disasters, especially with your family, you should all have a plan should anything happen. And so it makes communities safer. And then, instead of not being prepared for disaster, then the recovery is so much harder.
Hopefully this program will make people realize that they have to get back into the swing of things and not just see things there. They have to learn to use them or ask about learning to use them.
And don't expect disaster to come at you at every turn, but one of the examples I use about preparedness is storms and power outages. And
very good.
It's very, I feel bad. I'll get, there'll be a terrible storm, like during March, I think half the Cape lost power. Like 120,000 homes lost power.
Wow.
And then I was taking phone calls at the chapter house from family members who lived, elsewhere, and calling and saying, my 88-year-old mother is cold. And I said, well, we're doing the best we can. The shelters are opening and all that, but you should expect power outages. This is Cape Cod. Are you prepared for when you lose power, what do you do? And that's what preparedness is. It's, you need to make sure that your communication with your family, like where do we go if there is a fire? How do we get out? Where are the exits? What do you take? You have less than 2 minutes to get out of your house when you have a fire. So you should not be wandering around the house grabbing things. You should be prepared to know how to get out.
Yeah,
and the same
plan.
And the same thing with a power outage. I mean, gosh, in the winter, if they're predicting 90 to 100 mile an hour winds, expect power outages. And then the problem that happened in March was that they were continued winds for so long that the workers couldn't get up in the bucket trucks because they're not allowed to be up in 70 mile an hour winds. Yeah. So they had to wait for the winds to die down, which meant they couldn't fit. So what is your plan?
People need to know there are limitations for the assistant.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, people have to be safe. It's just like,
because we think, oh yeah, they know what they're doing. They should be up there fixing.
Yeah.
No.
And they were pre-positioned. They did a great job. There, you'll see tons of vehicles coming and trucks to help out. But if it's unsafe for them to go up in a bucket truck, you just have to wait till the winds die down.
Right.
And those were 2 and 3 day nor'easters, which was the problem.
And you mentioned winter. These outages happen in the summer.
Yeah.
And any other time of the year, too.
They do. And the summer, we're fortunate because we don't have extreme heat. But, when you lose power in the summer, you're going to lose some food or whatever. But at least you're not going to be too cold.
Very cold.
But, yeah, that's why it's really important. So I say to everybody who has maybe elderly parents or relatives living on the Cape and you live, make sure you know that your family knows what to do. And if a storm is coming, are they prepared? And if they do lose power, how are they going to stay warm until they can get to a shelter? And, about the food and what do you do so you don't lose as much food? Well, in a winter storm, you put it in a cooler and put it outside.
And people need to realize that, because you're so engrossed in what's happening to you that there are people who say there no longer is any common sense.
Maybe, yeah. Or they think that, as you said, that they'll take care of it. Well, but if they can't get to the, just like our volunteers who go help out at the regional shelters when there's a storm, they have to make sure their house and family's all set and prepared before they leave them.
Right.
And that if it's a sudden type of storm that we didn't have time to open the shelters, people can't travel during, dangerous times too. So again, it doesn't mean going to the grocery store and buying milk and eggs the day before. I mean, get things that don't expire or need refrigeration as much, but be prepared. You should always have some type of emergency kit in your home.
Yes.
A gallon of water per person per day, for up to 3 days, some canned food, a manual can opener, other nutritional food that doesn't need refrigeration. You need copies of all your documents.
Medications that you might be needing.
Yes, exactly. Yep. Make sure you've got
a little box.
Yeah, a little box that you need to check every 6 months or so.
Right.
So when the governor says that nobody can travel on the roads and you shelter at home, that's what it means. But you need to have supplies, batteries, flashlights, hand crank radios, so you can stay informed. Because the 3 steps are: get a kit, have your supplies in your house, make a plan, which means that everybody in the family knows a meeting place, or if you're separated when a storm comes, where the supplies are, whatever, and then be informed. So you stay informed however you can. Radio, or if the internet doesn't go down, you can listen to the weather radio, but also to find out if the shelters are open, where they are. So it's 3 simple steps, but you have to make sure you're staying on top of it.
Very good.
We have a program that was started in actually 2014. It's a national program called the Home Fire Campaign. And the purpose of it and the goal that the Red Cross had is they wanted to reduce the number of fatalities and injuries from home fires by 25%. So the way to do that is to have working smoke alarms, because smoke alarms don't prevent fires, but they get you out. They notify you. So this program is called the Home Fire Campaign, and we have volunteers who come to your house. They'll walk through your house with you and see what smoke alarms you do have. I mean, if they're hardwired, we don't do those, but check and see if they're okay. We can supplement with up to 3 battery-operated smoke alarms that we'll install for you. We sit you down and go over the home fire safety. Don't overload plugs. Space heaters are very dangerous. Keep an eye on what you fry, meaning don't walk away from stuff on the stove.
Yeah.
And then we have a little map that we give you to map out where your exits are. And so that, again, you're telling your whole family. And if you're a grandparent and your grandchildren come to stay with you, make sure they know things. It can be a scary thing to talk about, but I'll tell you,
But it's scarier not to talk about it.
It is, and kids are really fine with it. We have a program called the Pillowcase Project that we go to schools grades 3 through 5 and do disaster preparedness education to get them comfortable with it. And we even teach things like think of your favorite color and breathing. So in case, but then they go home with their pillowcase that they've decorated and for their emergency kit and say to their parents, "Do we have one of these at home?"
Wow.
So we sometimes try and do it that way, and so that they can help teach the family, this is what we need to do.
Sure. Now, this is new to me that you do the smoke alarms, and it's free of charge.
Yep.
And it sounds like something that might be done for elders, but it's not.
No, it's not. And there's
family.
there's not an income level. There's nothing. And we have an 800 number, a statewide 800 number that you call to get on the schedule to let us know. And because it's volunteers who do this, we schedule it when we've got 4 or 5 homes in an area, and then we pick a day that volunteers can come. And so it's not immediate. It's not like you call and we come out. We have to schedule it based upon our volunteers. But yeah, it's free. There's not an income qualification because safety is season. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor.
Right.
You might have fewer resources to recover from a fire if you don't have a high income, but even people with high incomes need to be educated on. One of the first homes I went to help install smoke alarms in was a very nice home, very wealthy area, but they were like, oh, I didn't know that, and we just checked to make sure, and we put in CO detectors too, and so it's really the education and the free smoke alarms.
Well, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's new and different, and it's nice to get it out there because, as we said before, we all know the American Red Cross does many, many things.
Right.
But do we really know what these things are? I don't believe we do.
Yeah.
I don't believe we're educated enough in what happens.
Right, and part of my goal as executive director is all the communities that I serve in my chapter, I just want to make them aware of our services because we have many things that we do. And then in return, we are always looking for volunteers. We always need volunteers because we do so many things. And obviously, we can use financial donations because that's what keeps our chapter going. But we have many different opportunities for people to serve on our board or do disaster response or do these preparedness presentations to kids or senior centers. There's so many ways to help support your local chapter. And that's why we need people to know all the things we do, because we do this with funds from the American people and with volunteers. So it's really great.
Yeah, that's a surprise to me. I really thought it was funded. And so you really do depend on the American people.
Yeah.
And we need to let them know.
Yeah, and everybody who I've met here today said, oh yeah, I took classes. So we've probably touched your life in some way, even if you've never had a fire or never had a service member helped by the Red Cross. But my grandmother was a Red Cross volunteer in suburban New York in World War I, and then she was a gray lady during World War II, and then volunteered in local hospitals. So when her mother passed away, there's a letter from the Larchmont chapter of Westchester, New York, with condolences on her because she was, so involved in the Red Cross. So
excellent.
It's in my heritage, that's for sure.
Very good. I think that's wonderful. One of the things that has been out and about because of the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, there are ladies knitting poppies to, to put on fields, and they're gorgeous. They've been on the news, and it's really a beautiful thing,
Yeah, and most of the coverage of the end of World War I was, if you saw it, you would see Red Cross, because Red Cross volunteers still serve in war zones, and they're still in hospitals. So a service member might say, "Oh yeah, I was injured, and in the hospital, the Red Cross came and helped me." But so it's hard to realize that it was so much more visible when Eleanor Roosevelt would have her Red Cross uniform on, and back at our chapter house, we have beautiful uniforms from all. So there's less of that, but we're still serving all throughout the world, and we're neutral and impartial, and we just help whoever needs help. There's not, oh, we can't help you, you're not on our side. It's the Red Cross, and there's the International Red Cross. So that's what we do. We help people.
You see a Red Cross. One of our ladies in a group, the Antiquarian Society, dressed up as a Red Cross nurse, and oh my goodness, she brought us back many, many years.
Yes,
She really did look the part.
One of our current volunteers, she's actually been with the Red Cross now almost like 50 years and she's not that old. She served in Vietnam as Red Cross. They had a funny name for it, but literally the donut dollies. But they were not recreation, but it just helped the soldiers just have a little taste of home, and they were really very helpful, but they were serving in Vietnam. And these are volunteers.
Amazing. So do you make the decisions about what the Red Cross does for this area?
So this area is interesting. So Barnstable County has a Regional Emergency Planning Committee, the REPC, which is run by Barnstable County, and then all the emergency managers from each town, which are usually the fire chief or police chief. and then all the other services and volunteer organizations are part of it. But
Okay.
so there's an executive committee of which our disaster program manager is part of that will make the decision based upon it. If a storm is coming, should we open the shelters or not?
Okay.
And then we help out in the shelters. We help feed, register, work in the dormitory area. So we're a big part of it, but it's a regional response here on Cape Cod specifically. And then off Cape, we open Red Cross shelters, and then we work with the town to say, okay, should we open? Because they're usually in schools. So then it becomes a battle at the end of sheltering. You know, they want to open the school, but we still have people we're sheltering.
Oh,
so yeah,
sure.
so you work hand in hand with the town or the emergency manager. Every town has an emergency manager, and it's important for you to
okay.
know who yours is, because they are responsible for the residents of their town to either get to a shelter or know where the shelters are. You know, when we've got a shelter open and people, the power is out, then the emergency manager stays in touch with the energy folks and finds out, okay, you know, Jan Sebastian Way just came back up. Who lives in, you know, everybody's registered. It's not about citizenship or anything. It's just, oh, you live there, so your power's back on, so we can get you back home. So that's, so the emergency managers play that role for their citizens. But every town has one, and you know, it's good to know some towns keep vulnerable population lists. So if you can't drive, or you're elderly, or you have electrical medical needs, let your emergency manager know that, so they can keep track of, okay, we know that this person needs transportation, or this person, if we lose power, they need power for their medical instruments.
So they have to have communication within the town.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, so that's part of the being informed part. Know where your regional shelter is, know who your emergency manager is.
Right.
Know,
and how would they find that out?
well, I can easily run a list. Again, you can call your police or fire department,
Okay.
and it's usually the fire chief. I think Sandwich actually has your own emergency manager. So sometimes it's a separate position, but a lot of the time. So, you know, call the non-emergency line of your local police station and say, hey, you know, who's our emergency manager? Who do I?
Oh, very good.
And the REPC, the BC REPC, Barnstable County Regional, there's a website, it shows where the shelters are. It would, you know, they're putting out information, what shelters are open. They have as much information, they try and get out as much information as possible. But
Do you have a general website that we could put on screen so that it could be the initial contact with people out there?
Yeah, well, so there are two different things. So here on Cape Cod, it's bcrepc.org is the website for the regional shelters.
Okay.
But redcross.org has tons of information on how to be prepared, how to make an emergency kit. So those are two different sites. We're just redcross.org/Hyannis, which has information just on our specific chapter. But redcross.org just has a ton of, you know,
Excellent.
how do I, you know,
Excellent.
senior preparedness, all these different types of things.
And how many towns do you cover? What
Yeah,
sector?
yeah. So I do know this, and I didn't write it down.
But say,
we
you know, of the Cape and Islands and southeastern Massachusetts, that's
yeah,
a mouthful.
It's Plymouth and Bristol counties, so all of Plymouth and
Okay.
Bristol, which includes, you know, New Bedford, Fall River, Brockton, Plymouth. I think it's like 87 towns.
Wow.
And it's about almost 1.3 million people. And they're all different, and that's why it's so important for us to have volunteers in each of the areas we serve, because they know their community, and we do try and standardize all the things we do, so everybody who receives services from the Red Cross gets the same thing, but we also like to localize it, to know that Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard's needs are different than Barnstable County, and then certainly Fall River and New Bedford are different than Hyannis.
Very
So
good.
it's not a grassroots organization, I wouldn't go that far, but it's
Okay.
really the local people that help know what we need to do and how to respond.
Well, it's certainly not something that people don't know about,
Yes, yeah.
no matter how you put that. You told us about the smoke alarms that I had not heard of before.
Yeah.
Are there other new and different things that you've been doing that is not really customary or has not in the past been customary for the Red Cross?
No, I mean, we still do blood drives and services to armed forces in the classes. We, in the Hyannis office, we do CNA state testing, so people who take the classes to become a CNA or home health aide, they need to come to our office to take their tests, which is a written and a practical exam.
Did not know that.
Yep, and almost every Tuesday we have that, sometimes more, because Cape Cod Community College will graduate a class, but they, in order to get their state certification, they can go to our Hyannis office, or we do it through Stonehill College in Easton. Is another, and then other locations throughout the state.
Very good.
But yeah, so
Did
it's
not
something
know
that I'll run into people say, oh yeah, I took my nursing test at your office, or I took a CPR class. So there's really we're just doing the same type of things, but trying to stay up to date with helping keep a community safe. And so things like the mobile apps, which again are great resources.
That's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, you can also donate a blood donor app. So I have that, and it keeps track of my donations, and I'm an O negative, and then upcoming blood drives, and I can just make an appointment that way. We also have, as I said, the pet first aid, and we have a kids app called Monster Guard, which is just a fun app for kids to use to find out about preparedness.
Oh.
So yeah, we're just trying all different ways to get the preparedness, which is not as exciting as disaster response or storm sheltering, but it's so necessary to do.
It's so very important.
Yeah.
And you said that people come to you and you test them for licensing. This is another reason why people might think that you're part of the state.
Right, yes, the state or the country.
Because
yeah, so I think we're the only location for the Cape and Islands, and now we don't do it in Fall River anymore, so Hyannis and Northeastern are the only two places that the Red Cross does the state testing. But yeah, it's as I said, almost everybody has some connection. Somebody knows something from the Red Cross, but as you say,
but not everything.
Don't realize all the different things we do.
Don't have any idea.
Yeah. So, but if anybody wants to volunteer or learn more, it would be great to call our office or go to redcross.org/Hyannis.
And if anybody wants to donate, and this is the donating season of the year, the Red Cross is very acceptable.
Yeah, you can do it online at redcross.org and donate, and you can choose your local chapter. But the neat thing about being part of a big organization is when anybody in my chapter area donates, whether I ask them to or not, if you're in my zip code, our chapter gets full credit for it, which is great. Yeah, so
very good.
It's very kind that people see that it goes to this P.O. box in Boston, like, well, I wanted to go to my local chapter. I'm like, don't worry, it will, as long as your check says.
That's very good to know.
And all it did was cut the back end for us. We don't have to do our own mailings. We don't, but it's all set up that it goes to where it came from.
Excellent, because this is very important to people.
It is,
people, especially people who don't have all that much to give.
Right.
So that what they give, they want to be part of.
Yes,
their local.
The Red Cross is also good about our blood, and our funds go where it's needed. So
very good.
People say, "Oh, I wanted to stay local," but then the California wildfires happen, and I want to help there. So just know that we use and the blood when we do a blood drive, we make sure that the local needs are taken care of first, but then it goes where it's needed. It doesn't just sit here saying, well, it was given here, it needs to stay here.
Very good.
It goes to where it's needed.
It doesn't need to be wasted.
No, exactly. And think of like when we have blizzards and blood drives get canceled, then we can bring in blood from other areas. And when the hurricanes hit Florida,
the left hand and the right hand are working together.
And so we'll say, gee, 300 blood drives were canceled in Florida. Please donate blood to your local drive, which can help, the areas that can't. So one hand washes the other, meaning Florida can help us with blood when we're going through blizzards, and we can help them when they go through. But again, they always check out the local needs first, but it can go where it's needed, which is wonderful.
Hillary, there is so much. There's such a content here that is mind-boggling. And there's no way we could cover it all in 1 half-hour session here. I would like to invite you back
That would be great.
to Sandwich Access and to do as many and as often as you might like.
That would be great because we've got our upcoming Heroes Breakfast in April, and I'd love to talk about that and
Excellent.
the history of that.
Well, we have a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Tell us briefly about the Heroes.
So the
Breakfast.
Heroes Breakfast happens every spring. It'll be April 5th in 2019. But we don't have a Heroes Breakfast without nominations. So right now, till the end of the year, we're taking the nominations for Heroes.
Excellent.
So if somebody has saved a life, or helped save a life, or helped somebody in need, or served the community in an extraordinary way, and that includes our police, fire, and military. I mean, they do
Very
heroic things
good.
every day, but if it's beyond the call
It's
of
kind
duty,
of like their job,
right? But sometimes they go beyond the call of duty. So, so we're getting nominations in right now. Again, you can go to redcross.org/Hyannis and click on Heroes Breakfast, and you can fill out an online form.
Excellent.
But it's an amazing event that you find out your neighbors and friends and family do amazing things, and they almost always say to me, "I'm not a hero." I'm like, "Yes, you are." And we want to make sure the community knows. It's more important for the community to know about you than you feeling like we're making a big deal out of it.
Very good. Good for you. Wonderful. Well, like I say, it's been a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Yes.
There's so much more that I'd like to know about, and I'm sure people out there would like to know about.
Sure.
And we may even get questions. Who knows?
Okay, great. Well, thank you,
It's
Robbie.
always easier to answer questions than to try to cover everything that you would like to think of. So thank you out there for being part of this show. This is your host, Robbie Haig for Downtown, and I'm hoping I'll see you again real soon.